People, as I said, the main mistake we make in dealing with other people, and it's a common mistake that I make as well, is we take the appearances for reality. We take their masks for how they appear to us, for their politeness, for their smiles, for their saying, oh, I loved you, etc., for the reality. And we have to learn that to look behind people's masks. We have to learn what's really, really going on behind them. And we have to learn some basics about human nature. People like to believe that they're essentially good, saintly, virtuous, however you want to do it. People want to believe that they're intelligent. You never want to feel like, I'm not stupid, I'm intelligent. And the other third thing is that they're willpower, that they're in control of their lives. They do things because they decided to do it. To make people feel insecure about their intelligence, right? To make them feel like they're not moral or they're not good. To make them feel like they do things not because they choose to, but because they were forced to or because they're not aware of themselves. They hate that. They're going to hate you. They're going to resent you. They're going to resist you. Knowing some basics about people like that gives you the power to use that for influence, for persuasion, okay? Understanding envy in the human world. And on social media, envy is just is like a nuclear bomb. It's just exploded. Our tendency to feel envy, to compare ourselves to other people. You've got to use that for power. There's great power in that, in a marketing publicity sense. Virality, getting other people to be interested in what other people are doing. That's how things sell themselves. If you try and tell people what they should buy, as opposed to, look at what other people are doing, I want to join in on that, right? Knowing about these basic qualities in human nature, about how we like to compare ourselves, how we have these certain opinions about ourselves, et cetera, gives you all of this power to take that human nature and use it for whatever purposes you want, for good, or unfortunately, some people use it for bad.
Do we have to lie to be successful? And I say this because through reading some of your work, I heard sentences such as, you should keep your true intentions hidden in social situations. You say a lot about kind of cloaking yourself in various ways. You talk about showing up as an actor, that sometimes we do need to show up as an actor in our lives. So in order to be truly successful, I know it's a little bit of a difficult question, but do we have to lie?
Look, Stephen, being a human being means we lie, right? The moment you open your mouth and you speak, you are essentially not telling the truth. You know what doesn't lie? Body language, nonverbal communication, the way you smile, the look in your eyes. You can't lie about that. But children, 3 or 4 years old, are already learning to craft what they say to mommy or daddy to get what they want. They're very clever. They're very strategic, right? They know that if they say that what they exactly want, they won't get it. They learn to kind of whine and complain and put a certain tone in their voice and to be an actor. A social animal like we are actors in life. Get over this idea about guilting about it. I'm so sick of that. We are actors. We are descended from chimpanzees. Chimpanzees are consummate actors. Read the literature on that. They know how to deceive incredibly well, and they don't even have language to deceive, right? So we are actors. The moment you go out in the public, you're not telling people, oh, you're fat, you're ugly, your riding sucks, I don't like what you're wearing. You never do that. You're an actor. When you see your father, you act a certain way. When you see a little kid, you act a certain way. When you see a little kitty cat, you have a certain tone in your voice. When you deal with your boss, the person who pays for your podcast, I don't know if there is such a person, you act a different way. You're constantly changing who you are and how you are. One moment you're Robert De Niro, the next moment you're, I don't know what other actor you are, but you're changing your roles depending on who you're dealing with. I'm so tired of people not recognizing this fact that we are all actors, that we are constantly deceiving. Yes, there are differences, there are qualities of lying. I understand that. There's Donald Trump lying, and there's the lying of the everyday white lies in which we have to say certain things to get ahead, et cetera, et cetera. There are degrees, I understand that. And Some lying can be very harmful and very counterproductive in the end. But the moment you enter the world and the moment you open your mouth, you are in some ways already an actor, and you are already using forms of deception.
Why can't we be our true selves?
Because it would irritate people, because it would grate, you know? I don't know about you, but I appreciate politeness, right? I go somewhere and I know someone's being polite. I know that they're not necessarily meaning it, but it's nice, right? It's kind of smooth. It kind of makes everything sort of smooth. If people weren't polite, I'll be grating and like two pieces of metal constantly hitting each other. It'd be so annoying. You'd want to kill yourself, or you'd want to kill people. You'd become a murderer, you know? Social life depends on that kind of smoothness, those interactions. So we need that to some degree. If we were just always telling people what we really thought, our world would collapse tomorrow.
What about showing our weakness? I've got this quote from you that says, if you are weak and ask for little, little is what you will get. But if you act strong, making firm, even outrageous demands, you will create the opposite impression. People will think that you are confident and that it must be based on something real. You will earn their respect, which in turn will translate to real leverage.
Well, it's about certain situations. So I don't want you to apply that idea to everything in life. And some people make the mistake when they read the 48 Laws of Power. They think, well, I'm going to use that everywhere. No, it applies to certain situations. So let's say you're negotiating. And I know I dealt with this myself. I'm actually a fairly timid person by nature, but I've learned to cultivate the opposite. So if you're negotiating a price for what you want for your time, for your services, and you're not very confident and you kind of ask for a little, that's what you're going to get, because people aren't going to, they're assuming that you're not really up to the task. You say, all right, $20,000 is enough. That's what they'll give you. But if you raise your price high and you say it with the right voice and you believe in it, they're going to go, wow, that person is confident. And if they turn you down, that's fine, because somebody else will give you that price. If you set your own value by what you believe about yourself. If you think that you're worthless, if you're not very good at it, other people pick that up.
As you were talking, I was thinking about Adam Newman from WeWork, and this conversation I heard with him and the founder of SoftBank in the back of a taxi, where Adam Newman's asking for $1 billion. And then the owner of SoftBank, this very eccentric Chinese, very rich Asian man, goes, do you know what, Adam, the only problem with you is that you're not ambitious enough. And he writes him a check, I believe, for like $5 or $10 billion in the back of this taxi after something like 12 minutes of being with him. And I always thought about that and thought, Jesus, what if I just started asking life for way more? If I just multiplied all of these emails that I send and requests I make by 10, what would happen to my life over this course of 10 years?
Well, yeah, you probably would have gotten a lot more than you got without asking for that. Because we're creatures that, as I said before, we look at the appearances of things. Look, it's very easy metaphor here. You go into a social situation like a party, and you go up to somebody who's kind of nervous and insecure and anxious. And I'm not criticizing that, because we all have insecurities. I have many of them myself. But you go up to somebody like that, and it makes you feel kind of nervous and insecure, right? And you're kind of fumbling for words, and it kind of goes, a bit of awkwardness happens. Reverse that, and you go up to somebody else, and they're kind of confident. They look you in the eye. You know, their voice is strong, their body language is strong. They connect to you. Whoa, you think it brings out that part of you who's like that. You might be intimidated, but it also might bring out your own kind of confident self. I remember being around 50 Cent, who's a very charismatic, confident to the point of ridiculousness. And it was very infectious. I felt that way after being around him for a couple hours. I was with him for several months. It rubbed off on me, right? We have these kind of viral, contagious effects by people. So if you project strength and confidence, and I understand it's a little different for women, which is an interesting subject, because sometimes projecting that for a woman will rub the wrong way, because people will think that, and it's a terrible thing about us, that women are judged by a different standard, where that'll seem like they're a bitch or something like that. So I understand that there are nuances here, and that the game is different for women as it is for people of other ethnicities as well, So it's not just one way or the other, but to the degree that even for the woman, that you have this air of confidence, that you believe in what you're doing, that you believe you're worth it, it projects itself to other people. You don't have to scream and shout, and you don't have to demand $10 billion. But if you feel confident, if you feel you're worth this amount of money, it will project outward to other people.
Body language.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that. Does it, you said earlier, it's one of the things we can't lie about. Is there anything that you still look for in today when you're trying to read someone, their body language? Are there certain cues? Is there postures or?
Well, you got to, in reading nonverbal communication, it's a different form of intelligence. It's not algorithms. It's not formulaic. It's human. It's emotional. It's empathetic. It's a reading without words. It's attuning yourself to other people. So I attune myself to people's emotions, to the vibe that they give off in an overall sense. A gestalt is one thing that I like to do. So if I had to give it a word, I would say anxious, or I would have to say outgoing and extroverted, or I would have to say impatient or whatever. There's an energy that kind of defines them. It's a word, and that word is not precise, but there is an overall feel that I get from a person. And then I'm always looking at specifics. It's not like I'm sitting there consciously in my head going through a checklist. I'm just feeling certain things. And I'm feeling that the eyes are kind of dead. They're not engaging with me. And you can't put that into words, but you know the feeling. So when someone's looking at you, but they're not really looking at you, you know what that feels like, don't you? Mm-hmm. And a lot of psychopathic people, a lot of narcissists do that. So part of their face pretends to be interested in you. They are looking at you in the eye, but they're not really looking at you. They're thinking of something else. They're seeing in you what they can get out of you. They're seeing you as an object, right? Eyes are hard to lie. They tell you something. Now, actors, very skilled actors, can kind of create some of these impressions. But one thing that they can't fake is the tone in their voice. And actors will tell you that it's the hardest thing to actually consciously control. So the voice of a person tells you a lot about their confidence levels, tells you a lot about, how just about their general emotional tone, about their character, about who they are. It's very difficult to fake. And when it's hesitant, when it's like stammering, when it's not, you can kind of sense something from people's voice, and it's very hard to fake. And then the smile tells you 100 different things if you know how to read it. There's the authentic smile, which I'm not going to fake right now, but it lights up the whole face, like you really feel joy. You can't fake it. Your eyes go up, your cheeks go up, everything kind of connects together, right? The fake smiles,
Yeah,
we've all seen the fake smile.
Just when the mouth goes up and the rest of the face doesn't bother.
Stephen, I really like you. You're wonderful. Most of the time, most smiles are fake, but you can kind of, when you see the genuine smile and you go, that's what caused the genuine smile, you should become aware of that. And then body language tells you a lot. Like, is somebody, when they're talking to you and you're standing up at a party, is their body kind of facing another direction while they're talking to you? Are they kind of looking out that way while they're talking to you? That means they're not really interested in you. They're not really engaged in you, right? Also, when you catch people by surprise and they don't have the time to put on a fake smile. I often tell people to do this. Like, there's somebody in your office, and you don't know whether they're a snake or whether they're actually genuinely your friend. You suspect it could go either way. You kind of approach them from an angle, right? And you surprise them, and you come up to them, and they look at you. And for a second, you detect what we call a micro-expression of disdain. And then they put on the smile. That micro-expression, which scientists, psychologists have studied, lasts for like less than a second, much less than a second. You have to be able to read it. But it reveals whether they actually like you or they're totally false. They can't fake it. So if you come straight on, they'll, oh, hi, Stephen, I love it, great to see you. They come in, oh, they kind of pretend, then they try and act, and you can get clues like that. There's so many ways to read body language. It's such a fascinating subject. I could go on for hours about it.
How important is it, you're talking about colleagues and team members there, and earlier you said that people are contagious. How important do you think it is to the success of our lives? And I pause there because success means it's a personal thing, it's a professional thing, to surround ourselves with the right group of people and to be intentional about that.
It's very important. I have a chapter in, in the 48 Laws of Power about infection. And I think it's an experience many of us have had, where you're around somebody who seems at first glance to be very interesting. And they become your friend, maybe. They're very dramatic. And they have all these stories to tell. And they seem almost slightly larger than life. And you engage with them. And then you become friends. And then slowly, it becomes clear that they're a little bit nuts, right? They're always talking about how this person screwed them, how that person screwed them, how this boyfriend or girlfriend was so awful and so nasty. You begin to realize, is this true? Or is it maybe they are the problem? But now they're your friend, and now you're emotionally attached to them. And now they have room to play all these kind of games on you, and all of their drama starts infecting you. And it's like, God damn it, I want to get away from this person, but I can't. They've infected you with their negative energy, and it gets under your skin. And so you have to avoid people like that. You have to read before you get involved with them that they are a drama queen or a drama king, because there are just as many men out there who have this quality. You have to see that they play the victim of everybody else, but actually they kind of bring it onto themselves. Some people are genuinely unfortunate. Bad things have happened to them, and it's not their fault. I'm never saying it's a misconception about that chapter, that you should avoid everybody who's unfortunate. There are people, and a lot of people out there, whose circumstances have made them, in their what's going on. It's not their fault, right? But then there are other people you have to recognize that the bad things that happen to them are things that they have brought on because they have this infecting power. It comes from a deep insecurity. You don't want them in your life. Being around insecure people will make you insecure. Being around confident people who kind of know what they're doing, who've got their act together, who are trying to make things and accomplish things. Because there's so many people out there who talk and talk and talk, but never do anything. Being around people who do things, who get things done, who've made a business, who've made this, that, or the other, they're gold to be around because they'll infect you with their positive energy.
Frenemies.
Yeah.
Do we all have frenemies, and how do we spot frenemies?
Well, hopefully we all don't have them. But in the Laws of Human Nature and in several of my books, I talk about the phenomenon of envy, which is a very, very powerful human trait. It has roots, very ancient roots. We know that in hunter-gatherer societies from thousands of years ago, envy was a real problem. And so they create all kinds of rituals to avoid envy, where the moment somebody in a tribe received a gift, they had to give it to other members so they wouldn't face envy. Because facing envy, you could be murdered for it. So you learned all of these rituals. And we've noticed that chimpanzees feel envy. You give one of the higher up chimps, because they're very hierarchical, a grape, And all of a sudden, all the other chimps are very wanting that grape as well, and they feel envy, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's an extremely human emotion. The thing that we don't realize, though, that the people most likely to feel envy, first of all, we all feel envy. We're all comparing ourselves to other people. I feel it all the time. Right now, I envy Ryan Holiday because he's, so 30 years younger. He's sold so many books. He's got all this great stuff. I know what envy is like. I feel it. We all feel small degrees of envy. But there are people, I call it passive envy, but active envy means people act on it. They do something to hurt you. They sabotage you in some way. Frenemies are the classic scenario. So somebody who feels envious of you ends up befriending you. And consciously, they may not be even aware of that. They think, well, I do want to like them, but unconsciously they feel envy. They think that you have success that you don't necessarily deserve, that you have what they want, right? They become your friend and they charm you, et cetera, et cetera. And then lo and behold, you start noticing all kinds of behavior that's very ugly that you weren't expecting because they're your friend. They start saying bitchy comments that get under your skin, that make you feel insecure. They take things from you. They act in ways that are hurtful. But because they're your friend, your first instinct is to blame yourself. Well, maybe it's my fault that they've done this. Maybe I'm actually to blame for what they're saying, et cetera, et cetera. So I believe behind the frenemies phenomenon is this phenomena of envy, where the person secretly wants what you have and they're becoming your friend so that they can wound you. And what's best to do is to recognize that. And one common sign of a frenemy, of somebody who's befriending you out of envy, is they're in a rush to be your friend. Normally, we like to take it a little bit slow. We just don't let anybody into our lives. We like to vet them a little bit beforehand, right? We don't trust everybody. But the person who feels envy is like, I love you. You're fantastic. I want to be your friend. We got to hang out. Let's go out for dinner the next night, et cetera, et cetera. They're in a hurry. That's a sign that something else is going on because that's not natural.
What about when friends become frenemies? Because sometimes through the process of us changing,
yes,
we might inspire that envy.
Yes, like your status changes. We've all had to deal with that. I've had to deal with that as well. You have success. And you came from a background where you weren't so successful and your friends are still there and they envy you and they're not very nice to you. And, it's not a good quality. And I understand the quality. I understand where it comes from. And I wrote about it in Human Nature, where we're all aware of the what we call Schadenfreude. Schadenfreude means you take pleasure in other people's pain. So you hear a friend didn't get the job that they wanted to get, and you go, "Oh, I'm sorry," but deep down inside, you're kind of happy. We all go through that, right? The opposite is Mitfreude. It's an expression that Nietzsche coined, which means you feel joy for other people. I like to try and cultivate some of the higher qualities in life. So if something good happens to somebody, my first thing is I might feel a twinge of envy, but then I go, it's great for them. I'm actually very happy. I'm excited. I share their joy in what has happened, right? But it's not natural. So when somebody that you know and you've known for a long time has success in life, your first thing is to be, they didn't deserve it. They kind of cheated their way to it. Okay, as we talked about in the very beginning, you confront that ugly emotion yourself and you go, that's not who I want to be. And you go, I'm going to make myself feel the opposite. I'm going to make myself feel happy for their success. It's not natural, and most people don't go through that. And I know personally from people I knew before I had any success in life, they're the ones that give me the fewest amount of compliments for my books. They never read my books in the first place. They're very spare with what they say. They've got a pinched look on their face. Whereas people I've never met before in my life give me all kinds of compliments.
Why is that?
Because they're envious. They're upset.
Are you are you threatening them because they see themselves like you because they knew you and you're from where they were from, so you're even more threatening? You're holding up a mirror to them in a way that makes them feel even more uncomfortable.
Well, they're not going to feel that way. So what people will go through in that sense is, and this is how I think it through. Oh, Robert sold himself out. He wrote a book that's evil, that's nasty, that's manipulative. I didn't think he was like that. I thought he was this nice person. Oh, I don't like his book is ugly. They'll go through that process. They'll stay my friend because we've had years and years together. It's very, very common. At least I know that. They do that with my books. Even though my later books aren't like the 48 Laws of Power, they still have it in the grain that this guy who used to be so sweet and nice wrote these nasty, evil, manipulative Machiavellian books. He sold out.
What is it at the heart of the 48 Laws of Power that some people are triggered by? Like, what was the single most triggering concept, or the most controversial, or the concept that people just had a surface level allergic reaction to on sight without even really reading it? They just, they don't know.
Yeah, they read the back of the book, they read the names of the laws, and they go, oh, that's ugly. And a lot of times they've had to deal with ugly people in their lives. And so that's when I see the authentic disgust reaction. I understand it, that they had to deal with someone who's very manipulative and they find it disgusting. Of course, when I get to have a rational discussion with them and I calm down their emotional reaction, I said, look, if you had the 48 Laws of Power before this person manipulated you, they would have never been able to manipulate you. That book is the best defense you could ever have in your life. It's like a shield. Once you've read it, you know all the tricks people are playing on you, right? They know they're posing as a friend and acting like a spy, right? They're concealing their intentions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's showing you all of these tricks. Okay, but that's when they calm down and are able to say that. But the idea that we're not angels, that we don't all have the best intentions in life, that I'm writing a manual, they think, for how to manipulate, how to deceive, how to con people, triggers people very much. A lot of people who've suffered in life, who've had a lot of pain, understand that there's irony in the book. They don't read it the same way. They read it knowing, yeah, I've had this happen. This is what people are like. I'm okay with it. I'm cool with it. And I must say, I don't know if this will come off wrong, but a lot of the readers who responded most positively to the 48 Laws of Power early on were African Americans, people like 50, people in the hip hop business, etc. They didn't have any illusions about human nature, about how good we are, because they've seen this side all throughout their lives, right? 50 said when he got into the record business, he was shocked at how political people were, how manipulative they were. So they weren't having that same reaction. They weren't having the guilty reaction like, oh, I don't want to read about that. Why do we even have to discuss that? That's not positive. That's not helpful. That's, I think, a lot of what triggered people.
It's funny because I was speaking to a CIA agent recently, and he said something at the end of our conversation to me. He said, one of the things I've come to learn from being in the CIA is that I no longer believe that equality is possible. And he said equality, yeah, because that's just not the way that the human world works. And we all pretend we want equality. We all pretend we want everyone to be equal. But if you look at every game we play, whether we're politicians or we're business people or whatever, it's all about hierarchies and power and getting ahead. Even the sheer nature of being a politician is campaigning to get into a position of, objective power. And I wanted to know what you thought about that.
Well, I mean, there's some truth to it in the sense of there's something in our nature that is hierarchical, that has deep roots in us. But I do believe in one form of equality, and that is everybody at their birth has the possibility for following the path that I talk about in Mastery, for being great, for fulfilling their destiny, for being the unique individual that they are at birth. So everybody is born with a DNA that will never be replicated in the past or in the future, right? There is a uniqueness about every person. And there's a uniqueness about your parents, about your background, about your early years, right? And that uniqueness is a seed that if you cultivate it and you use it and you know your purpose and you mine it for power. In mastery, one of the master I interviewed was a woman named Temple Grandin, who was born with severe autism. At the age of 2, she was about to be committed to a hospital for the rest of her life. She was like almost like in a walking coma. So for some reason, they got her a teacher to teach her language, and she started emerging a little bit. And then slowly she blossomed, and she realized, because it was something common to a lot of autistic people, that she had an incredible connection to animals. And a lot of autistic people have that. She couldn't connect to people. They were so tricky and deceptive. She didn't know how to deal with them. But animals, give her a horse, a dog, a cow, she felt like she was one of them. She ended up following that path and becoming a high-level animal behavioral scientist who, she was born with autism, about to be committed to a hospital, and yet she achieved incredible success in life as a scientist. I do honestly, and I'm not faking, I do honestly believe that everyone has that potential. But it's not equal in the outcomes of that. There are a lot of people, the majority of people don't follow that path. But I do believe everybody has that potential.
Is that potential like objective greatness, or is it our own subjective greatness? I can become the greatest version of Stephen. Or do you believe that everyone could become great in the context of, the very best in the world, like, Steve Jobs? Or...
No, they're not going to, you don't have to be the very best in the world. I mean, when Mastery came out, we were, the New York Times wanted to do a story about my house in the home section. Okay, well, why? But all right. I never get any publicity from mainstream media, so okay, fine. So I had to quickly upgrade my house because they were going to come over with photographers. And we got a man over to do the tile work on my patio, which looked like hell. And I told people, this guy was a true master. He wasn't like making 6 figures. Nobody would ever write an article about him. He will die and no one will ever know that. But I could see in the quiet quality and how well he understood it and the care that he took in it and how much he enjoyed, creating a beautiful effect with tile work, that he was a master. It doesn't have to be the best ever. You don't have to be famous and successful. There are grades of this. There are degrees of it. Some people, it's just being a great parent. They're very social. They're very empathetic. And they're not maybe going to become an extremely successful finance person, but they're really good at raising their children, and they put a lot of effort and care into it. That's fantastic. You don't have to be famous. You don't have to be Steve Jobs. There are levels of it, right? But the sense of this was what I was meant to accomplish, and I'm following it, and I'm happy what I do. I feel fulfilled by my work, and I can go on doing it. I take it seriously. I care about it. I do believe that anybody can have that level of power in their life.
I think I struggle with that, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, please.
On a personal level. I struggle with enough being enough. And also, I think I've grown up in a generation where there's so much comparison everywhere we look, when we open up our phones and Instagram, that you kind of always are led to believe that you're not quite there yet. Now, I've contended with the idea that maybe that's a good thing because it drives you forward. It's that pressure you described. It's that creates that urgency, that desperation. So maybe I should never believe I'm there yet. But then also I wonder, am I going to defer happiness off into the future because I think it's behind some kind of accomplishment or job title or, success in my life? And, when I hear about that tiler, I go, that person that was tiling your patio, I'm really jealous because they sound content with much less than would make me content. What is the correct answer? Is it to be the happy tiler who's tiling the patio, or is it to be the impatient Steve Jobs, that striving for the personal computer?
Well, it depends on who you are. We're all individuals. We all have our unique energies. It's the fact that you engage, you love, that you're emotionally connected to it, that it gives you a sense of fulfillment, that you're not looking over your shoulder, oh, I could be doing this instead. I'm fine with that. It doesn't have to be the Steve Jobs who's continually dissatisfied, who's Faustian, who always has to have more. I'm not against that either. I don't know why we have to be so judgmental. If people are following the path and they are in love with what they do and they have a genuine connection to it, I'm not going to judge it because they're not famous or because they're not trying to be the greatest, the Michael Jordan of tiling or whatever, etc. I think it's fine. And you're not happy. You want to crush it. You want to have the #1 podcast. That's fine as well. Why can't we have, that kind of diversity in our world?
The most important thing for both those types of people, the people that have that sort of insatiable sense of ambition, but also the people that are content with whatever they're doing in their lives, from what I heard there, is they both love what they're doing, and they both have those core components that you described earlier, like they both feel the challenge in their work still. And that challenge might be, okay, I'm going to do a bigger patio today, or it might be, I'm going to launch $1 billion business tomorrow for someone else. And it's really about those core components of like challenge, meaning, purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, because what you don't want is you don't want to be in your 50s, in your 60s facing death, because your days are numbered. Who knows how long you're going to live? And you're going to go, damn it, I could have done something with my life. When I was a child, I had these dreams. I thought I was going to be really great at it. And I never realized it. I went off on these other paths. I was lost. I thought I was happy, but I never really fulfilled any of those childhood dreams or those fantasies. It's a terrible, terrible feeling, and I want people to avoid that. As long as it's something that engages you, that's connected to that child that you were, it's something that you love, and that you can create these challenges for you.
Is death a motivator for you?
Well, it certainly is now, because my days are literally numbered. You reach a certain age and you can literally count the numbers of the days that might be left to you. And I nearly died several years ago with my stroke, came this close to dying. I was driving my car, and if my wife hadn't suddenly seen something, I wouldn't be talking to you here right now. Either I would have crashed and died, or I would have had such bad brain damage that I'd be a vegetable. So I know about death. I feel it in my body. Every day I wake up, I do my morning meditation. I'm aware. There's a practice that I have in my meditation where this could be my last thought. I could die 10 seconds from now. What do I want in my head in those last seconds? Do I want to have some petty little thought about somebody who did this or said that? Or do I want to have something else greater in my head? I'm constantly aware of my mortality. And with the book that I'm writing, it's always in my mind, because frankly, I'm aware that I might die before I finish the book. So now I've written 2/3 of it. If I die tomorrow, the book can be published. And it's okay, I can live with that. But, I'm in a hurry to get it done because I know it could happen at any moment, and it almost happened to me. So I'm continually aware of it, but not in a bad sense, in a way of, it kind of gives meaning to my life. It makes me aware of how, valuable each moment is, and how things that I look out my window, I see people doing things that I can't do anymore. And I go, they take it all for granted. They walk around unaware of their mortality, of how their body could break down at any day now. I'm aware of it. So I'm not going to feel envy because my mind is at a different level. I'm aware of the ephemeral nature of life, and it makes everything kind of beautiful to me. It makes me appreciate everything around me. I don't mean to be too saccharine about this, because it could come off that way, because there is a dark side to it. And I definitely, in my dreams and in my thoughts, I have a lot of that darkness. But I believe the awareness of death is a beautiful, beautiful thing. It makes everything intense and makes everything aglow.
With that awareness, if you were my age, I've just turned 31.
Wow, you're a kid. Jesus Christ, man. I hate you. I was 31. I was the biggest loser. That's amazing.
If I could transplant that awareness from your head to my head,
It's hard.
that you've got from the life you've lived, but also from that stroke incident and the perspective of your mortality that it gave you and the ephemerality of life that it showed you, how do you think I would live my life differently? How would you have lived your life differently when you were 31?
I make a point of I never go through that exercise because I believe in something called amor fati, which means love of your fate. Everything happened for a purpose. I wouldn't have done anything differently if I had to go back because it all led to the right things. So if I'd been in a hurry when I was 22 to be successful as a writer, I would have never been able to write the books that I wrote. It would have all gone askew. Who knows where I would have ended up. I'm very, very happy I don't regret anything. But if you're young, what often happens is, because your life, the pattern of your life, if you think of it as a weaving, is only like, for you, is only like a third woven, right? For me, it's like 2/3 woven, so I can see all of these patterns that you can't see in your life. But at your stage, you tend to think, I've got all of this time ahead of me. I'm so young. I can do this. I can go travel here. I can do this business and that business, et cetera, et cetera. You don't feel that sense of urgency. You don't realize that tomorrow you could be hit by a car. Tomorrow you could suddenly be diagnosed with cancer. People are dying now in their 30s and 40s. Unfortunately, when you get older, a bad habit is you start reading the obituary pages. I don't know why. And you start reading about a lot of people who are in their 40s and 50s are dying left, right, and center today for various reasons. It can happen. And what it does to you is it says, I only have so much time. I wanted to accomplish this one thing that I've been putting off. Okay, you wrote your book. Maybe there's something else that you've always wanted to do, but you have never done. And you're kind of putting it off. A sense of urgency, a sense that your time is relatively short, is a good thing. The other thing is, it makes everything a little more intense, a little more aglow is the word I like to use. So I used to swim like 3 days a week, and I would swim long distances, and I loved it. It was my greatest therapy. I just loved getting out of my head and just being in the water, okay? But I never appreciated it until now when I can't do it. So I want you to appreciate you going to the gym, to having your health, to being able to do these things. Don't look at it like take it for granted. And it pisses me off that young people take all this stuff for granted. They think that I'm privileged because I have this success center. No, when you're young, you have all these privileges. You have your health. You have other things that could be taken away from you. Don't take for granted these things in your life that you have that are not going to last forever. Think in those terms and think of how more intense everything around you becomes when you have that mindset.
One of the things I think I worry that I take for granted is my romantic relationship with my partner. And, hearing your story of being in that car that day, it's literally evident that your romantic partner can save your life.
She did. And we've been together for a while. I'm not going to say how many years because she doesn't like hearing that. We have a deep, rich past, and it's a wonderful thing. And she saved my life. And saving someone's life, man, it really is important. It really means a lot. It kind of changes things. And in my book that I'm writing now, I wrote a chapter on love, which is something I've never written about, obviously. I've written about seduction, etc., but I've never written about love. And I wrote about the sublime quality that you can have when you allow yourself to go deeper and deeper and deeper into that falling process, where you get rid of your ego, you get rid of your defenses, you get rid of all the resistance, and you just let yourself fall, 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 and you connect to someone on that deeper, deeper level. It's, as I say, it's a chapter on the sublime because it is a very sublime experience. And the reason I wrote it is I feel like people are missing that now because they don't want to be vulnerable. They don't want any pain. And falling for another person and letting go of your defenses opens you up to pain, right? And we don't want to experience that. We want to be invulnerable. And it's like cutting off all the richest experiences in life. And so I wrote that chapter addressing that and say, let go of your defenses, let go of your resistance, let yourself go into that process of falling. Feel what it feels like to have your ego dissolved in the presence of another person and care more about them than you care about yourself.
You mentioned a second ago dark thoughts and dark dreams. We all have dark thoughts. Our dark thoughts are our own. How do you go about dealing with dark thoughts, and what are those dark thoughts that you're able to share?
Well, in my dreams, I'll be doing all kinds of weird things. A lot of times there'll be guilt. Like, did I actually murder that person? Are the police actually after me? Damn it, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to my reputation? Then I wake up, So all that kind of stuff happens. But also doubts about myself and depression and I've dealt my whole life with feelings of like not being very worthy. Like even doubting my success, doubting that my work is any good, doubting that I deserve it. I had, a lot of periods in my life where I wasn't successful, and I kind of had it ingrained in me that I could do better, I could do better, I could do better. I wasn't a good parent to myself. I was very tough on myself. And a lot of my dark thoughts are I'm still very tough on myself. And it's like, the other dark thoughts that I have is I can't do the things that I used to be able to do. Is life even worth living when you can't like hike, when you can't swim, when you can't go out on your bicycle, when you can't travel normally? Is it really worth it? Maybe death wouldn't be so bad compared to that. I go through that, and then I go, I talk myself out of it again and again and again. But my dark thoughts are about myself and my doubts and about the state of my body as it is right now, kind of thing.
If I said to you that I had those same doubts about, if we were identical in every way, and I said, Robert, I'm having a lot of doubts about, I can't go out on my bicycle, I can't do the things I used to do, I'm wondering if life is worth living. And I asked you for advice, I said, I don't know what to do about all this self-doubt I have about these books that I've written. What would you say to me?
Well, I would say there's a lot of people who talk a lot in life who bullshit their way, who say they've accomplished this, that, and the other, and they've never done anything. You have a book out there that you can be very proud of, that you can die tomorrow, and it's like a memento that will live on forever. And you've accomplished it. You've accomplished this stuff with your podcast. You've actually made things. So focus on that. Focus on the fact that so many people never get out of bed and amount to anything. So you've built things. You've accomplished things. Focus on that. And then about your body, well, when you're dead, it's all gone. Who knows what there is on the other side? But just think of the insanity of what it means to be alive, and that's another chapter in my new book. The odds against you, Stephen, of ever being born are absolutely insane, and I describe those odds in the book. And I go through from the very first cells from life forming on planet Earth to the evolution leading to us sitting here, is unbelievable. So that you are alive is an incredible, astounding thing. And you have to think about that. And you have to think about just seeing the sky, just being aware is an amazing thing. So I often think about people who are suicidal. There are a lot of people like that in life, particularly nowadays. And I know because I went through that period most strongly in my early to mid 30s as I was contemplating the lack of success in my life. And what kept me going was I still believed that I could accomplish something. So even in my darkest moments, I managed to pull myself out. But then I think of people who maybe don't have that energy, who are kind of going down that hole. And I know from my own experience that hearing somebody tell them that life is incredibly amazing fact won't have any effect on them, right? Because it doesn't connect to them emotionally. And I often think, how could I connect to them emotionally? How could I make it clear to them that there's something there that's worth preserving? I don't have the answer here today, but I think about that all the time. Like, how would I deal with somebody who is suicidal? And I get people writing me like that, and I've had relatives in those situations before. So that's something I think a lot about.
It's a difficult question to answer. What you have to say to that person in that situation to get them to believe in the sublime, to get them to believe that life is worth living. I ponder whether what maybe you need to do is to get them to take the first step to create evidence for themselves somehow, whatever that small first step is.
I think that's great. I think that's spot on. That's exactly what you have to do. They have to come to the realization themselves, and through some action that you get them to do, which gives them a little bit of an ounce of belief in themselves, then the spiral can turn around. So I think you're right. It has to come from them, and it has to come from something that they actually do. All the talk in the world won't really help them. What that is something that I would like to think about, and it depends on the individual. But I think that is the way to do it.
You're writing this book at the moment called The Sublime, right? Are you writing that book because of the situation you found yourself in after having the stroke and going through that journey of saying, why is life worth living, and going in search of the sublime that we all have inherently?
Well, to be honest with you, about 20 years ago, I had the idea for the book. I read a book on the subject, and I got excited about it because they were explaining it as it's a kind of experience that's very hard to verbalize, that goes outside of what we normally experience. And I got very excited by the idea. And I planned to write that book. And then after war, that was going to be my fourth book. And my agent was getting all prepared to sell it. And then I got hooked onto 50 Cent. And I did that book instead, and I put it on the back burner. And then Mastery came up, and I got hooked onto that. And suddenly it kind of got pushed aside. And then in Human Nature, first of all, the last chapter in the 50 Cent book is on the sublime. It's about death and what 50 and facing it. Then the last chapter in Human Nature is about the sublime. It's about death and mortality. And the irony is that 2.5 months after finishing that chapter in the book, I nearly died. But what I had planned originally was I was going to go to the Gobi Desert and walk across the Gobi Desert. I was going to go swim with whales, literally whales in New Zealand. I was going to go to Tierra del Fuego. I was going to have all of these sublime experiences and write about them. And now I can't do any of that, right? All I can do is sit in my little room in my house at my desk and write the book. It's all in my head. The book is so much better because of that. So it's changed. I can't go to the Gobi Desert. I can't swim with whales or I drown. I can't go to Tierra del Fuego. I can only sit in my office, look at the birds, go through the books that I'm reading, and write the book, keeping in mind other people and what's going on in the world in their life and my limitations. So ironically, the book has become better because I had to go through this experience. But nearly dying was going, little bells were going off in my head. All right, it's time to write that book. You're not putting it off any longer.
And has it forced you to find the sublime in the everyday life?
Well, obviously. I mean, I'm writing right now a chapter on what I call the daemon, which is an ancient Greek concept that all of us are born with like a guardian spirit, right? I know it sounds very mystical, but a lot of psychologists, contemporary psychologists, have written about the daemon phenomena, the idea that you have a second self, a kind of higher self that in some way is guiding you. And it has a lot to do with some of the things we've talked about, purpose, etc. And I have to think about it. I have to think about it in terms of my own life. I have to think about, is there something else inside of me that's communicating to me? What does that mean? How does that connect with other ideas about the universe? I get to read books about it. It's a very, very exciting process. It's keeping me alive right now. And then, I write a chapter about animals and what's sublime about interspecies communication. And now I get to look at my cat. I don't look at my cat, or I don't look at the birds the same way as I did before I wrote that chapter. So it's changing me, and it's lifting me out of the kind of people who have strokes. We all have to go through terrible diseases, all of us, unfortunately, unless we die by an accident, cancer, etc. Strokes, the number one thing that happens is terrible depression, to suddenly lose your body and what you could do. And so this has kept me out of that depression, I have to say.
You said that all of your books have been kind of focused on different subjects, and that's very much the case. There's sometimes through lines between the different books, but they're all very much focused on a variety of different subjects. If there was a message that kind of brings all of your work together, if this was your last day on Earth, what would the message that you would want to leave the world with be?
Wow, that's a really good question. A lot of my books have to do with the reality of our life and what, not what we want to believe, not our fake ideas about it, not our illusions, etc., but what life is really, really like. This is the human animal. This is how they behave. This is what will seduce them. This is what will turn them off. This is how strategies will get us what we want in life. This is how you can master your subject. Not the bullshit thing that people tell you about mastery, where you can take a drug, where you can hack your way to mastery. This is the truth. This is the reality. So all of my books, the through line is, this is what the world is really like. It's not ugly. It's not beautiful. It just is. And it's great to just relate to the world as it is, to see things as they are. It kind of is liberating. And in a way, it is kind of beautiful to just connect to the reality and not being inside of your wishes about, why can't people be more like this? Why can't somebody tell me this? Why can't they give me this? Why can't I be successful? Blah, 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 blah. Getting rid of your illusions and just looking at the way life is sort of, I guess, would be the through line of all of my books.
Do you see life as a bit of a game? And is that a healthier way to view life? A game where we need to learn the rules and then play the game versus fight against the injustice of the rules of the game?
Yeah, it's all a game. Definitely. There was a great man on the left named Saul Alinsky who wrote a book called Rules for Radicals. He was a strategist